All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's that time. We're previewing our Power 5 conference. This is where the big boys play. It's like WCW. Well, maybe one of these conferences is like WCW, but the man who was a professional wrestler for WCW way back in the day, yes, he wrestled under the name Mr. Poseidon. My co-host, Fresh. Fresh, how you doing?
Perhaps I'll bring it from the top rope every time. Just try to bring the excitement and cause the chaos. And, now we're talking about the big boys heading into the Power 5 conferences, looking through there. And as we all know, to get to the playoff, for the most part, you've got to win your league and you've got to play on championships, Saturday. So these conferences, looking through, navigating the path is what you got to do to get to the playoff and potentially play for a championship.
Yeah, we're going to have to start referring to the Pac-12 as WCW here because they are in their last year together, it looks like, and being bought out by a bigger company. But we'll get to them here in a little bit here, Fresh. So let's start in the ACC. Fresh, tell me, is this a two-team league, or is there some other chance that someone else may win this thing?
I think there's probably 3 or 4 teams that potentially could compete for the title. There's no more divisions anymore, so it actually opens up for a lot more widespread chaos. We keep waiting on. I think we've been waiting on Miami to be competitive in the league for 25 years ever since they moved in. I still think they're a little bit away. They're still messed down there. But you got interesting teams like North Carolina, Pitt, who's been there, resurging programs that are trying to get going at NC State. Georgia Tech's trying to cause some noise. Clemson's been there, and then of course the historic ACC dominant team in Florida State trying to make noise, getting it back on the national level. Outside of that, there's kind of some unknowns and some rebuilding programs, but there's 4 legit teams that could play for a title. I think that's Pitt, UNC, Clemson, and Florida State. Outside of that, it would be a miracle run from someone else to really be sitting there on that championship Saturday in Charlotte playing for the title. To get there, though, I think you got to look at the 3 games I'm looking at to really going to steer the course of the season. The first one is going to be Week 4, North Carolina at Pitt. Big offense going up there. Drake May going to play Pat Narduzzi's defense up there in Pitt. That's it's 2 different styles. Very aggressive defense, playing hard-nosed football there at Pitt, and a wide-open offense, air raid style under pretty solid quarterback at North Carolina. How those 2 styles sort of mesh and clash, and could be a preview of a championship game, but it really definitely will be a deciding factor in the race and in rankings going forward. Next game I'm looking at, Clemson at NC State. Last time the Tigers went to Carter Finley there in Raleigh, North Carolina, they got beat 2 years ago. This year they're playing a different quarterback. They will not be playing Devin Leary. They'll be playing Brendan Armstrong. But it could be, NC State could be up for it again. They have the confidence. They showed up. And what kind of Clemson team are we going to get this year? Yeah, they have Garrett Riley there as the OC, and they try to change things up. But Cade Klubnik didn't show us much last year in the starting role. Only 1 game, obviously, and he played partially in the title game. But where are you going to get a full season of that? How's that going to play out? That could be a nice little upset special or real chaos in the league. And then at the very end, one game that I think back in the day it was amazing, and what they really truly built the new ACC around. It hasn't lived up to it as much lately, but Miami at Florida State. It's Florida State's truly only real home game of any significance when they come down to it. Most of their tough games are on the road. If Miami has recruited well and they've kind of got something going there by the end of the year, this could be a big matchup there in Week 11 on November 11th. If not, it's just a rivalry beatdown for Florida State to add to the resume. But you kind of hope that Miami's competitive, makes that a real game, and maybe is ranked and helps out Florida State's schedule going forward. But that could be in a big rivalry game. Crazy things happen in that Florida State-Miami game. If Florida State has to kick a field goal late, I like Miami's chances of winning. But those 3 games are going to tie, in my opinion, how the league's going to navigate going forward. What do you think, Seth?
I'm going with the 3 games that I kind of looked at. And, folks, you're looking at Fresh probably cross-eyed right now and saying, if you're talking about the ACC, how did you not bring up Florida State traveling to Clemson Week 4, September 23rd? That's because we tried to pick 3 separate games. We compare notes there and kind of which games we're going to talk about. That's got to be the number 1 game on everyone's schedule this year is Florida State going to Clemson. That's going to be the biggest test for Florida State. Are they able to go to Death Valley? Are they able to get the big win over there? But there are 2 other games I feel really will make or break this season. If it's UNC traveling to NC State November 28th, the last weekend of the season here for the ACC, with that, it is Drake May versus Brennan Armstrong. Two quarterbacks who really can light up the scoreboard there. Brennan Armstrong is transferred from UVA. They lose Devin Leary. He went over to Kentucky, but there's been a lot of talk about what you're getting in Armstrong there. Are you getting that experience? Are you getting a guy who knows the offense, is able to kind of spread the ball around, lead that offense that NC State really didn't have last year? So watch out for that game. That could be a nice offensive explosion during Thanksgiving week. And then the third game, this game's a sneaky game. We have a lot of respect for what is going up there in Pittsburgh with the Panthers, but Brian Brom going to Louisville to be the head coach there and taking them up to Pitt. He had a great offense when he was over there at Purdue. Going to Pitt, it's going to be great offense versus solid defense. Who's going to come out on top on that one? That's October 14th. Big game there. ACC is filled with interesting matchups going forward this season. So I'm really looking forward to those three. I think it's going to come down to it. I know the betting favorite right now is Florida State. Don't doubt Clemson. As much as I can't stand Dabo Swinney, I still will put some respect on their name. Clemson's going to maybe have the best defense there. And really fresh for the ACC, for me, it's going to come down. Is defense going to win the day or offense going to win the day? If it's an offensive team, it's going to be Florida State. If it's a defensive team, watch out for the Clemson Tigers. Maybe, just maybe, the Pitt Panthers. Because, I've learned the hard way not to doubt them these last 2 years.
Well, looking at the league, there's so many great players, especially at the quarterback position. There's a lot of high-level, high-octane guys. But I think the most key player, in my opinion, is running back Trey Benson for Florida State. If he can find ways to really build off of last year and give Jordan Travis another weapon in that offense, it can make them very lethal. Also, truly want to take people's wills away, running the football down their throat late in a football game, being very powerful, being very physical, because they're going to kind of need that mentality to help win ball games late and churn out victories. So looking at what he can do, I think he's going to be very critical in that overall offensive scheme for Florida State. If they can't throw, if that pass defense for Clemson, say they're playing for a title, even in the regular season, that's shutting down. How can they run the football and how can they dictate that football game? I think that's going to be critical, and Trey's going to have to do a big part of that. Surprise team, I think, from the ACC to keep an eye on, though, NC State. They had some injuries last year with Devin Leary being beat up, some guys around there. Bring in Brandon Armstrong, bring his offensive coordinator from Virginia. He's a record holder there. He still can sling it. See what they can do. They're not getting the hype this year as they got last year. Can they sort of be under the radar for a little bit and quietly get a couple teams, maybe pull up a couple upsets and put themselves in the mix? I think that's a team to keep an eye on as the season moves forward. But my ACC champion is going to be Florida State. I think the Noles get it done and live up to the hype going into the season and are a team on the cusp of a playoff spot if they don't get one outright.
So you went offense, I'm going defense, and I'm going to talk about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Can he live up to the name? Can he live up to the family name and the hype and lead that Clemson defense? That defense is going to have to lead the way to start the season. But my champion, though, is the same as you, Fresh. I got Florida State win this whole thing. I really think their offense is going to be electric this season. And I also think they have a fairly solid defense. Their schedule works out very nicely for them. Surprise team for me is the Pitt Panthers. And I think that every year we're waiting for the shoe to drop. We're waiting for the Pitt just to kind of fall off, go back to maybe 7-5. I don't think that's going to happen with them. I think that what they're doing up there, what they have as a coaching staff, what they have as player development, I think they're a solid team. I think at the end of the year, if they're sitting at 10-2 and all of us are looking, they may be in Charlotte for that ACC title game if Florida State or Clemson kind of trips up along the way. Pitt could be that team that we're sitting there because there's no divisions anymore. That Pitt is the one going to Charlotte with a real shot to win the ACC. So that's kind of my surprise team for the ACC.
But buckle up, folks. It's going to be a fun league. Upsets galore. I think that's what this conference really sees. And I got a feeling now with Clemson, the cream is starting to get back up to them. They're not by themselves anymore. And it's going to be much more wide open across the board.
All right, Fresh. Let's go to the Big 12 right now. The league in flux. Very different. Last year, we're going to see the Big 12 looking the way it does right now. Texas, Oklahoma jumping to the SEC if you've been living under a rock. Cal, Arizona State, and Utah coming to the league. I can't wait to see what the Utes do in 24. We'll be here for that one. But we got to talk about 23 first. Fresh, we're going to start in one place. Austin, Texas. Talk to me. Austin, Texas. Is Texas going to be the champion?
I tell you right now, this is for Shark and for the entire Texas program. This is a put up or shut up moment. You get all these recruits. You've had these top 10 recruiting classes. You come and get, Quinn Ewers. You go get Arch Manning and all this other stuff. Transfers coming in left and right. You got more money than God sometimes. If not now, when? We thought Texas was back, quote unquote, about 5 or 6 years ago when they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and then they faded faster than some horses do at the horse track. It's this is time, and if Texas doesn't get it done now, it's only going to get tougher when they go to the SEC and are competing against quality opponents in tougher environments. All due respect, but going to Baylor and going to Iowa State, it's not as tough as some of the venues they're going to be traveling to in the SEC starting next year. So you got to buckle up, you got to get it done, and make it happen. When I'm looking at this season, past few years, it's been a complete just random, luck of the draw. Great teams sort of rising to the, up above. You got TCU, you had Oklahoma State and Baylor the year before. You got guys who are just competing at a constant level. Iowa State was in it during 19 and 20. You got a bunch of teams who always rise up out of the blue and play hard-nosed football, and it's very tough to predict. But when you recruit at a high level, you've got to find a way to figure it out and put it all together. Your coaching legacy, Sark, is also at stake. If you aren't getting it done here, you might be done as a head coach potential going forward. So this is a big pressure on Texas, big pressure on him. And when the season comes down to it, there's 3 games that I kind of have on my radar. Kansas State at Texas Tech on October 14th. There's Texas Tech has a lot of hype. Kansas State, defending champion. Will Howard going out there to Lubbock. That could be a potential preview for a conference title game, or at least guaranteeing maybe one spot in that title game. You got 2 good programs built very tough, built very defensive minded, who are going to be going after it. That could be a really fun one to watch, so don't forget that one. The next one, and it kind of hurts to say this, but this might actually be the last year of Bedlam. Will we ever get an Oklahoma State game? They're going to have to schedule it now as a non-conference game, and there's nothing technically on the slate going forward. This was, as it is right now, the last Bedlam football game we're going to get. I got to feel like Oklahoma State is going to be upticked a little bit more for this one to get after it before Oklahoma leaves town. So you might be seeing a lot of emotions flare up. Oklahoma State's already been publicly, Mike Gundy said some stuff, kind of frustrated and mad that they're leaving and chasing money and all that stuff. This could be something where Oklahoma could get upset. They could be right for it, not looking at this game and taking it as seriously as Oklahoma State does. So keep an eye on that one when it comes down to it. And then November 24th, Thanksgiving weekend, Texas Tech at Texas. There's a lot of hype around the Red Raiders, a lot of hype around the Longhorns. This also could be the week before, potentially a Big 12 title game preview. So a lot at stake there when it comes to Austin at the end of the year. Who's going to lay it out? Those 3 games I have on my radar coming into the season.
Yeah, Fresh, with me, when I'm thinking Big 12, and I know this is tough because this game is synonymous with the Big 12. It's one of the neutral site games that is on my bucket list, man. I want to go see this game more than anything else. That's October 7th in the Cotton Bowl at the Texas State Fair, OU versus Texas. The Red River rivalry, Red River shootout, whatever you want to call it. That's just a special game. I really think whoever comes out on top of that game is going to have a leg up and be the front runner for the entire league going into the season. The other interesting one, though, the day before, it's a Friday night game, and that's K-State at Oklahoma State. And it really comes down to the fact is just, you're talking here, Fresh, about, Texas and OU, kind of we always think that those are going to be the 2 top teams going into the Big 12, going and winning the Big 12 title here. That's where the easy money is going to be. I think K-State and Oklahoma State, there's talent there in both of those programs that if, what if Oklahoma doesn't have the year that we expect them to have? What if Texas doesn't have the year? Both of these teams have enough talent to get themselves to Dallas at the end of the season. I think that whoever comes out of that game on Friday night could be the front runner to get themselves into Dallas if OU or Texas slips up along the way. And the game of the surprise teams. I think both of these teams have a lot of talent. I think this could be a high-scoring affair. November 18th, UCF traveling to Texas Tech. I think that game could really light up the scoreboard. I would be probably taking the over in that game as of right now. I don't know what the line's set at. It's a couple months away, but I'm already looking at Texas Tech hosting UCF and the Golden Knights there, or the Knights, I'm sorry, not Golden Knights, but making sure that I'm keeping my eyes glued on that game on November 18th.
Like I said, almost every single game is going to be some sort of significance when it comes to the conference championship because these teams are so well rounded and so even. There's a lot of parity in this league. We've seen it before. We've seen it. We'll see it again going forward. And I just love it. It makes every single game you have to tune in and really be locked in. You can't look past anybody. And that leads me to my surprise team and actually my player that I want to watch. My surprise team this year is going to be Kansas. And why are you saying? Well, they're not surprised. They were good last year. Nobody expects them to be good 2 years in a row. I think they're building something. They just have the announcement right now. They're putting all this money into Kansas football. They're putting a whole new renovation around the football stadium. They're pumping it into recruiting, pumping it in facilities. This program's not going anywhere. Coach Leopold and what they've done there, they got the Jayhawks off the mat. They played great last year, got them to a bowl game. They're going to get better this year. They're not going to be like, oh, they were 7-5, and then they're back down to 4 wins. This team is going to continue to keep resurging. 7 or 8, maybe even 9 wins this year. They will continue to stick around. They will upset one of the big teams and really be a thorn in everyone's side and build a program from the ground up for consistent winning, not just a one-year wonder. And that comes also from the quarterback, Jalen Daniels. He had a great run last year, and that TCU game kind of got dinged up, kind of slowed the momentum on the season, and then they got back going once he got healthy. If he could play fully healthy this year, the way he could run, the way he could throw, create stuff all over the field, he made everyone else better. He gave the team energy. If he can do it this year again and build off of that, special things for the Jayhawks, full bound, and pulling off an upset or two and really making a big case to really cause chaos in the league. So Kansas, my surprise team. Jalen Daniels correspondingly is my quarterback, my player to watch in the league. They're going to cause some chaos and do big things.
Yeah, fresh. My surprise team is going to be the UCF Knights in this league. I think that UCF has been kind of that one program that's been primed to make the jump into Power 5. I think the talent's there, the alumni base is there. UCF is one of the 3 largest universities in the entire country for their undergraduate program. They have a lot of connections in Orlando. They have a lot of businesses that are looking to get that NIL money into that program there. I think UCF is a big thing for this going into the season. Don't be shocked if UCF pulls off an upset. Now, am I saying they're going to make it to the Big 12 title game? Probably not. Don't know if they're going to make it there because, I'm not sure there. But going to 9-3 and saying, wow, this team really made some noise in the Big 12, I like UCF in that regard. My player to watch, though, is Quinn Ewers. How Quinn Ewers goes is going to be how Texas goes. Quinn Ewers is competing for a Heisman Trophy this year. He should have an opportunity to do that. They got the weapons. They got the talent there in Austin. Then Texas, you will be back at that point. You will officially be back and ready for the SEC. If Quinn Ewers struggles throughout this year and maybe goes and lays a giant egg in Tuscaloosa, don't think that's going to happen, but what if? All of a sudden, the story in Texas gets a lot bigger and a lot more negative on that side right now. So Quinn Ewers is my player to watch. My champion, though, for this, and I'm going to surprise some people with this, I'm going with Oklahoma. I think Brett Venables is going to figure things out. I think he's going to have that defense ready to play. I think he's going to get a healthy Dylan Gabriel. If they don't go with Dylan Gabriel and go with Jackson Arnold, I think there's talent there in OU. I think that they can kind of want to show that they're better than what they were. And folks, remember, they gave Florida State everything they could handle in that bowl game. So I don't think that, if you just look at the record of Oklahoma, you're going to sit there and go, man, they weren't that great, and they're going to take a while to get back up. No. Oklahoma recruits itself. I think that they'll be just fine this year. I'm going to call them to pull the upset over Texas this year, and OU ends their time at the Big 12 as champion.
Wow. Well, I'm going to take the other side of that. I'm saying Texas wins the title. I don't think they're going to be. They might not even make a playoff, but they will win the conference championship. We'll put it that way. Because the playoff, they might have a couple losses in there, but they will find a way to be Big 12 champions and send off into the sunset with a title there in Austin.
Fresh, I'm going to call an audible on you here on this one. So let's go over to the Pac-12 before we go on to the other 2 conferences. I said that Pac-12 is a kind of like WCW back in 2001 there when the WWF at the time. buys them out. You talked about the parity in the Big 12. I actually got to lead off and ask you this question. More parity in the Big 12 or in the Pac 12?
Whew. I think top to bottom, there is better teams in the Big 12 than the Pac 12. I mean, there are some teams in like Stanford, Cal, um, Arizona State. They're a little rough. Washington State, they're kind of in a down part. Like that kind of hurts me right there. That bottom part is not as strong as the bottom of the Big 12.
Okay. All right, so let's talk Pac-12 here football. This is a loaded league. If you're not watching Pac-12 football, it's the last year you get to do this. Last year we get to talk about Pac-12 after dark. Folks, we've said this from day one. We've said all this when we started talking about 2023. There is some really, really good football being played out west this year. I would argue that the best quarterback play is going to be in the Pac-12 this year. There's a loaded amount of quarterbacks. There's not enough time that we could do this conference preview justice. So, Fresh, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are the three biggest games? Because there's a ton. Like, there's a huge slate. Like, we could pick at least 2 or 3 games off of almost every, and you're right, maybe the top half of the Pac-12 schedule, saying that these are good games. So which 3 did you kind of narrow it down to?
Well, folks, if you're looking for a breakdown right off the bat of the Pac-12 quarterbacks, there's an article in Spinable Sports and my power rankings of all of them because they're loaded. I mean, the top 8 are legit playmakers, and some of them could be top 3 in other leagues. That's how good this league is right now. But when it comes to the Pac-12, USC is not getting the cupcakes this year. They aren't getting the 2 games they have to play. They have to play the legit players. They got Oregon and Washington added to the league. They're going to have to find ways to play a much tougher schedule this time around, and that's going to create better TV, better viewing, more chaos in the league. When it comes to the 3 games that I say we have to watch, it starts off with Utah at Oregon State. These are the 2 outliers when it comes to great offense and loaded offense in the rest of the league. These 2 teams are going to play amazing defense. They're going to run the football, play action, manage it. It's going to be old school. So if you ever want to turn back time and watch what it was maybe in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, this is what you're going to get, and it's going to be fun. Going up to Corvallis is going to be a Friday night, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard on FS1, under the lights. It's going to be a grudge match, and you're going to see 2 great teams fighting it out. And unfortunately, one's going to have to lose the football game, but it's going to be great defense, run the football, play action, good, true Americana football from back in the day. So tune into that one. The next one, this game, we might top 100 points by halftime. The Washington Huskies travel to the Coliseum and take on USC. I don't think either team's really good at playing defense in the first place, and you bring in amazing offenses on top of that, 2 probably the best quarterbacks in the country shooting around. We could see like a 65-62 football game or 70-75. Like the scoreboard operator is going to get a workout, so maybe give him some water, some electrolytes, get it prepped because that's going to be a fun show. That game takes place on November 4th. That game might even be a preview for the championship game itself. And then another one, USC, Oregon. The reason why Dan Lanning was hired, in my opinion, was to be the other side to defend Lincoln Riley. He went to Oregon to build themselves a defense and build a program that's going to be tough, intent of stopping Lincoln Riley in that offense there at USC. They both were hired within a week of each other. They finally get to match up November 11th, a week after the Washington at USC game. So USC's got to be ready back-to-back weeks of playing tough opponents in their own league, one on the road, one at home. That's going to be a true test of Lincoln Riley and how that program is built, how that program has progressed. But also, all those other teams who've recruited well at same can play at the same level. Those are my 3 games that I'm saying to watch out for, but there's about 7 or 10 others in the league that we can even list out here if we wanted to.
Yeah, Fresh, I thought you were about ready to start quoting Cher, if you could turn back time, if you could find a way. Well, you'd take back all the words that have hurt you, and you'd stay. You'd stay, because that's what if you could take it all back, the Pac-12 would stay together after this. Fresh, I think you're spot on with every single game you picked. I think that Utah-Oregon State game is going to be like maybe one of my favorite games of this season, because I hate that. I really hope that game's like a 7 overtime game, because we both are huge fans and have so much respect for Kyle Whittingham at Utah. We love what they're doing in Corvallis for the Oregon State Beavers. And it's like this is going to be a heavyweight fight that a lot of people will kind of be like, man, they'll kind of pass it off. But it's going to be an amazing game. That if you guys just lock into that game, watch it, just enjoy the good football that you're going to see. That's going to be a remarkable game. I definitely tune into that one. You know, I kind of circled Utah at USC October 21st as my first game to kind of watch, just because is Utah has not come to LA for Lincoln Riley. You know, USC went to Utah last year, lost by a point. Then they go to Vegas, get shellacked in Vegas, get absolutely boat raced. Now the game's in LA. Does it change it? Or does it give Utah a little bit more motivation to really perform in that game? The next one, again, and these are both the same weekend. You talked about Oregon State playing Utah. I'm going to say UCLA playing Utah. And UCLA is my surprise team on this for this season, just because I think that they're kind of laying in the weeds. And I think Chip Kelly kind of likes that. Chip Kelly's been kind of the focal point. We started off this podcast 3 years ago talking about whether or not Chip Kelly would be fired. And then next thing you know, DTR Charbonnet leads UCLA to be a really nicely talked about team. They've lost some of those players this year. What do they have coming in? They have some talent there in Westwood. Watch out for that game because it's going to be fun to see what UCLA does traveling up to Corvallis. And then the big game for me, this was a classic. I wound up watching this game at Mike's Garage Bar, and Oregon at Washington, October 14th. That'll be a night game. I guarantee it. That's a fun one. I can't wait to see what they have. Bo Nix versus Penix Jr. I'm telling you right now, Penix Jr.'s my favorite to win the Heisman. I know he might not, but that kid's such a good quarterback out there. Can't wait for that game. So those are my three there, Fresh. I gave you my sleeper team. My champion is the Washington Huskies. I'm rolling with Penix Jr. this year. I'm gonna kind of shock everybody. I'm not going to USC. I'm not going to Utah. I'm gonna go Washington and the Huskies. I'm really buying a bunch of stock with Penix Jr. this year. But I think the most important player to watch this season in the Pac-12 is Kalen Bullock out of USC, the safety. That defense for USC has to be better. If they want to make any type of jump this season, they have talent on offense. That defense has to be better. It's got to be led by Bullock. They got to continue to force the turnovers. That defense must be better in order for them to make any noise. So that's my player for the Pac-12.
Well, I'm going, quote-unquote, players. Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. You have arguably the number one overall player in the country, Travis Hunter, and Shedeur Sanders, obviously Deion's son. They were 5- and 4-star players respectively. They both spurned bigger opportunities, and they followed Deion to Jackson State. Now, all due respect to the HBCU and FCS and all that level, playing in the Pac-12, playing in FBS is going to be a different experience. These players are going to see challenges. I want to see how they respond to those challenges of a better defense, more well-coached defenses, better athletes all across the board. How are they going to play? Because I have a feeling these guys are truly elite players, but now you're put in a different situation because the pressure is now on your shoulders to show off and to show up every single week. The target's now on Colorado. The target's on your backs of being the prime time show, pun intended. So, whether you want it or not, you got the smoke coming, and I really want to see how you guys respond and take advantage and show up every single Saturday. So I'm really trying to watch the two of them if they can put on a show. The team might not be great. I'm not saying they're going to win 8 or 9 games, but if the two of them can put on a show playing receiver and corner for Hunter, and obviously Sanders playing quarterback, it could show they're the real deal and that they can go to the league and do what they want. But I want to see what the two guys can do. My surprise team are the Arizona Wildcats. They've been laying in the weeds, haven't been to a bowl game in a while. What the coaching staff has done down there, they brought in a couple 4-star players last year. They got Redding coming in next year as a 5-star recruit. They're bringing the kids in down there in Tucson. They've put together an offense. Delory is a pretty good quarterback, can run around, make things happen with his legs. Watch out for the Wildcats. I think they're going to a bowl game this year. They might pull off an upset or really even shake it and change course for a couple teams. But watch out for the Wildcats. But my champion at the end, the USC Trojans. This time in Vegas, they will actually find a way to win the football game. The defense will do just enough, and Caleb will put up 18,000 touchdowns in the game. and the Trojans will win the Pac-12.
Wow, they're fresh. That's crazy. 18,000 touchdowns.
He's going to set a record.
That's a heck of a record right there. I love it. Yeah, I had to call an audible there because we talked about parity from top to bottom, and I really think that you're right. There's a lot of parity in both these conferences, in the Big 12 and the Pac 12. All right, let's go to our next conference. That is the Big 10. The Wolverines winning the conference the last 2 years. They're talking about the Big 2, Little 10 is what they used to say back in the day. But I don't think that's true anymore, Fresh. What say you?
Well, before I really dive into preview, I have a really cool stat here, and this is going to lead to where we're going with the rest of my preview. But between 2013 and 2022, 9 of the 10 players of the year in the league have been a Buckeye or Nittany Lion. Buckeyes have owned 7 of them. The Nittany Lions own the other 2. What school/player is the other remaining 10th item? Do you have any guess?
From what are the years again?
Between 2013 and 2022.
I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor, Wisconsin.
You got the school right, not the player. Melvin Gordon got it in 2014. But
and the position right.
You have the position right, Badger running back. But that just shows what I want to try to get to is the dominance of Ohio State offensively ever since almost around Urban Meyer arrival period. And they've been able to put that to become a factory of quarterbacks. The only Buckeye not to win it as a quarterback was Zeke, who was the running back. But they just put out players left and right. And the story's not changing this year with Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, and Emeka Ibuka and the loaded talent in the backfield. They just put players together. And that is going to be very key this year going forward, is using that offensive mentality and finding ways to win football games, get over the hump against Michigan after the past 2 years of struggling there. But they've owned the league, and I have a feeling that's going to lead to what they're going to have this year, owning the league. I'm calling it now. I'm going to start off Ohio State's winning the Big Ten. It's done. Write it up. Put it in history books. The Buckeyes are taking care of it. Their defense is going to be a lot better. Their offense is going to be lethal. They don't care who the quarterback is. They're going to figure it out. They're on a mission. They've come close the past 2 years. Their only obstacle really in the regular season is Michigan. If they get past them, they're in the Big Ten title game, and they have a clear path to the playoff. This team is locked in. This team is focused. They have a drive behind them, and they have the offensive, defensive talent and recruiting to get it done. So now that I've skipped ahead to the very end, I'm going to talk about the games that are going to get us there in the end of the season. The first game I'm looking at, Wisconsin at Illinois. Has Luke Fickell actually gotten this team there? We've heard a lot of, they've got a bunch of recruits there. They brought a bunch of quarterbacks in. They've changed the offense. There's a new vibe there in Madison. The former Badger head coach down there, Brett Bielema, is down at Illinois. Put together a big year last year, got them sort of back on the map, and I think they're still growing. Is all the hype from the offseason truly real? Can they go beat Illinois? Or is that just on the hype in the offseason and Illinois is still good? That's going to be a big game to keep an eye on, October 21st. The next one, Penn State at Ohio State, October 21st. Later that afternoon, it's probably going to be a night game. Can Penn State get over the hump? Can they go into Columbus and get it done? Can Ohio State, who's already been probably battle-tested by then, can they find a way to knock off the Nittany Lions again and keep moving on in a path? That's a game that obviously is going to be on everyone's radar. Everyone's going to be there. I'm sure Fox will have the whole thing, but that's a big game on my radar as well to watch. And then keeping the Nittany Lions involved, November 11th, the Wolverines go to Happy Valley. Can the Wolverines win a big road game like they did last year up in Ohio State? This game could be the last game, 2 weeks in advance before they play the game. If they stumble here, that puts a lot more pressure on that final game of the year. They could still lose one and beat Ohio State and make the playoff, but they've got to find. They can't trip up and then trip up again. They're done. Jim Harbaugh's been talking a lot. They've been saying they're great. They have a whole, beat Georgia section of their practice period. This game could be that, stub their toe moment because Penn State's going to be a lot better than everyone thinks. And we've been talking about Penn State for a long time. Got to be focused there if you're the Wolverines going into a hostile environment late in the season. And how does J.J. McCarthy survive that element? And that's going to be interesting to watch.
They have a beat TCU segment in there too.
I don't think they skipped that part.
Yeah. So, Fresh, I'm coming down to 5 games, or 3 games, and I kind of have 5 on my initial list here that I'm looking for with it. I'm going to go September 23rd. It's already been announced as a whiteout game, and that's Iowa traveling to Penn State. Iowa's going to have a phenomenal defense. The questions with the Hawkeyes is going to be, can Cade McNamara, who transferred from the Wolverines to Iowa, kind of be the shot in their arm on the offensive side of the football. This is always a tight game. Iowa always gives Penn State a lot of trouble when they come to Happy Valley. I like this game. I think it's going to be an interesting one. I take the under in that game, depending on where that line comes in. But I think that's going to be a very defensive side of the football game. I like that September 23rd, Iowa at Penn State. The second game I had is November 18th, and that is Nebraska at Wisconsin, going to Camp Randall. I think we're going to learn a lot about both of these programs going into the 24 season, because where's Matt Rule got Nebraska to? He's going to have to defrost Nebraska, pun intended right there. And Luke Fickell is really going to be remaking the Badgers into his own image, the talent. They got Tanner Mordecai there. They got this beast of a running back named Braylon Allen over there. He's phenomenal. Wisconsin, you could go on around the corner and pick up some farm boys and they'll block for you and get 1,100 yards as a running back. There's a lot of talent there in Wisconsin. Where does Luke Fickell have that team at the end of the season? Where does Matt Rule have that team at the end of the season? I'm interested to see where both these first-year coaches go for the Big Ten. And then the game is always the most important game in the Big Ten. That's Ohio State traveling up to Ann Arbor to face the Wolverines. That's going to come down to it. Ohio State has lost this game 2 years in a row. It's been over 3 years since they've had a victory in this game. Nothing would kind of maybe ease some of Ryan's Day's critics than going up to Ann Arbor and getting a win up there. That's a huge game for them. The Wolverines are going to look to kind of continue their win streak here. It's going to be a tough place. If Jim Knowles' defense is kind of improved, like the Ohio State's chances there, that's really going to come down to it. There's a good possibility that the Big Ten could see 3 teams at 11-1. Penn State's got a lot of talent there. The Wolverines have a bunch of talent, and so do the Buckeyes. My player to watch this season is going to be one of my favorite things and one of my favorite running backs in the entire league, Nicholas Singleton. I love this kid. He scares the living bejesus out of me for being an Ohio State fan. I don't want to play him, and I think he's one of the best running backs in the entire country. I like some other guys, some other places, but I really, really like Singleton. They have a great running back room there in Happy Valley, but my champion is going to be Ohio State. I'm going to say this is going to be the year they figure it out. I think Ryan Day is motivated. I think the Buckeyes are pissed for what happened last year. So give me Ohio State going into this season. But my surprise team, and I couldn't pick between the two of them because I think both of them are going to surprise some people.
Well, my surprise team is going to be Illinois. I think everyone's overlooking them. They've lost a bunch of guys last year, lost the whole secondary. I think Brett Bielema's got that program reset, and they're going to be in a great spot to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and mine too are the Maryland Terrapins. I think that they're building something good in Maryland, and also the Iowa Hawkeyes. And I think that the transfer of Caden McNamara and being able to kind of improve that offense, Iowa may be really, really tough this season. So interested to see how both of those teams play out this year.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the players and the whole thing, we talk all the star-studded guys. The guy I'm really watching, though, is Emeka Ibuka. He's the other, quote-unquote, other receiver for Ohio State. How is he going to get the coverage? How is he going to adjust when Marvin Harris is going to get all the attention? I think he's going to be in for a big year. He's always put up stats the past few years he's been there, but now he's a chance to really, truly shine and add more accolades to being the Ohio State receivers of the recent past where they've been dominant. If he has a chance to really put up some numbers, boost his NFL stock, but become that two-pronged attack that they have to really help out Kyle McCord in that offense.
Right. All right, Fresh. Let's go to our last Power 5 conference, the SEC. Oh, boy, howdy. There's a lot to talk about in this conference here. There's a lot of interesting things. There are some really big-time marquee football games this season. Fresh, I'll let you lead off here. Who do you got? What are the 3 biggest games going into the season for the SEC?
I mean, like you said, there's tons of games to look at. You could pick multiple games each weekend. I think that's between the SEC and the Big Ten and then Pac-12. There are tons of games. But when it came down to what I was looking at, September 16th, South Carolina at Georgia. Now, last year, Georgia went to Columbia and beat the trash out of them. So after that point, South Carolina, Rattler kind of got comfortable. They sort of built some momentum. They had a clunker at Florida, and they just destroyed Tennessee. and then had a very strong early bowl game. They lost late to Notre Dame, but they showed signs of life. They beat Clemson in there too. The program kind of rallied. They had some guys transfer out, but Shane Beamer's built a core there. And this is a chance for South Carolina to have some sort of redemption. It's also an early season test, the first test for Georgia. Their first two games aren't going to be worth salt. So how does this Bulldog team really look between the hedges opening week? Technically, I'm going to call it opening week. The first two games don't matter. And how is South Carolina, how's that team really matured since last year's matchup? And how do they progress? Is the game more competitive? Do they come in there? They've done it before. In 2019, they pulled off the upset with Muschamp as head coach. Can they cause some chaos early on in the season and really shake things up? Really, that'll be the first time that Carson Beck really has a true game against a legit opponent. How does he show up versus the Dogs and for the Dogs and throw the ball around? A big game to keep an eye on. We're going to see a pulse check there for both programs early in the season. The second one is up in Knoxville, Texas A&M at Tennessee, October 14th. First of all, I think A&M's going to be a lot better than we were last year. I think they kind of got hit in the face with some serious reality last year after all the hype. They got back down to earth. They've kind of maybe refocused, play a little better, play a little more inspired football. They've definitely recruited at a high level. And is Tennessee looking ahead to Alabama the game after? That's where I think it's going to be a trap game for the Vols. Up at home, you're looking ahead to Alabama. You won last year. You have to go to Tuscaloosa next week. Who is truly focused on A&M when the Aggies come into town? The Aggies could pull off an upset and really shake up the SEC East and the SEC as a whole. So that's a game right there. Where is Tennessee's mind at when the game happens? And then the third one, the Iron Bowl. Hugh Freeze has actually beaten Nick Saban twice when he was at Ole Miss. They host him. They've obviously hit the recruiting trail going for the class 24 hard. They've gotten players that are playing better. Can they pull off an upset? In 2021, the Brian Harsin team should have beaten Alabama. They didn't have the fine way to get through late in the football game. Can Hugh Freeze find tricks up his sleeve? When Auburn's competitive and the Iron Bowl in general, don't care how good or bad you are, Jordan Hare was going to be a loud stadium. It's going to be hostile. Can Hugh Freeze pull off an upset and really shake up the playoff? Just imagine Alabama being, I'll say, a 10-1 coming into that football game, and then Auburn upsetting them, just destroys everything, ruins it. This could be a big game chaos right there at the end of the year. So those are three games I have on my radar going forward.
Fresh, there's so many fascinating matchups here that we got to really I can't wait for us to get into the season because there's so many games that I wanted to talk about that I just kind of had to cross them off and go, we'll talk about these guys later. But I think one of the biggest games of the year, every single year, is LSU traveling to Bama. Anytime that the Tigers and the Tide play each other, it becomes deeply personal. You know, Brian Kelly got the win last year. He jumped over the shark that is Nick Saban. He kind of gotten to that point where finally he beat Saban there. I feel like I just get this feeling that Alabama is really motivated this season to eventually avenge some of the losses that they had. LSU, Tennessee, I think you're kind of put on notice this year. The other game, though, that I'm really kind of fascinated with is Texas A&M traveling to Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is kind of a sleeper team. There's some questions over there at quarterback. I know there's all sorts of stuff, and they brought in what felt like 15 new quarterbacks through the transfer portal for competition. I kind of am more. I've looked into Ole Miss going into the season. I'm liking more and more what Lane Kiffin is doing over there, but they also have maybe my second favorite running back in the entire country in Judkins. He is an absolute monster. He is one of my players to watch. The other one, though, that I really am curious on, and this game is going to really be the measuring stick. And while I think Georgia's still going to win this game, we are going to see how good of a coach Josh Heupel is. We're going to see how far Tennessee has come. That's November 18th when Georgia winds up traveling to Knoxville to face the Volunteers in Neyland. It's going to tell us so much about both of those programs. Is Georgia, because the majority of Georgia's schedule, while yes, I'm starting to come around on the Ole Miss thing, South Carolina can play Georgia tough. I got a lot more questions about South Carolina than I got about Georgia. But that Tennessee game, I think that Tennessee will have a lot of things figured out by the time they get to November 18th. I think Georgia will have a lot of things figured out. So that's going to be a marquee matchup game because I think we talked about this in our preview there, Fresh. That game could, well, Tennessee could wind up losing to Alabama this year. That game could still be for the Volunteers to get to Atlanta for the championship game. And that's a lot to play for. I still think Georgia's going to roll in that game, but I'm using that game as a measuring stick to see where is Tennessee because, most people know if you ever ask me about Josh Heupel, I think the world of Heupel. I think they got a lot of great things going there. They've got a lot of talent there, but are they still a year away? And that's a big game for me.
Like I said, there's loads of games going left and right. When it comes to players, the player that I'm really looking at in the SEC, Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson. He's been a dude the past 2 years. Kind of got beat up, dealt with some injuries last year, and kind of helped. They had lost some steam. If he can stay healthy, the dude could put up 50 touchdowns, whether throwing or running for the Hogs. It's just that the defense can help him out if they can get stops, but he can put it up on himself. He puts it on his shoulders. He loves playing at Arkansas. Play for Sam Pittman. He could be a dark horse contender for the player of the year in the league. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman Trophy because you're going to have to be undefeated or usually play for a championship at that point, but he could be the player of the year. I think he's the player you got to keep watching because he's going to make a difference in the SEC West, maybe pulling off an upset over somebody else, maybe being that guy who gets the job done, maybe takes out LSU, maybe takes out Alabama. Um, it, Putting it on his shoulders, having athletic ability, KJ Jefferson is a stud, and I think he's going to leave it all on the field as last year. When it comes to my surprise team, Auburn is going to be a surprise team. There's talent in that locker room. There was talent there last year. Brian Hurston had no idea what he was doing. I don't even know how he even got the job in the first place at Auburn. But what Hugh Freeze is going to do, he understands the league. He's going to get guys in there. The transfer portal helps. They've brought new energy into that program. And Auburn is going to be a force. They're going to play better. They might not win 10 games, but they're going to be a lot more competitive in every single football game. And they're going to make games very, very difficult for their opponents. And they're going to make teams actually play a full 4 quarters. It's not going to be the team you saw the past 2 years where you could go in there with your B team and beat the trash out of them. You've got to play, and you've got to play early and often versus Auburn. You can't give them an inch. That team's going to be better, and I think they're just building something to get back to Auburn standards in the next 2 to 3 years of the recruiting. So keep an eye on the Tigers. When it comes to the title, the Dogs are going to win it back to back SEC championships, and they'll get in the playoff and go from there.
All right, Fresh. So like I said, Judkins is one of the players to watch, but I'm also watching out for Mason Smith at LSU. The D tackle was supposed to be a anchor in that LSU line right there. He messed up his knee in that opening game against Florida State. He could be a huge difference maker for LSU to really bring back the teeth of the Tiger defense for them. I'm fascinated to see what he brings back. Is he the same player coming off that ACL injury? Sometimes kids aren't the same at that point. And getting through an injury as a 20-year-old, I'm hoping that he's got the right people and the right coaching staff around him because he truly is a special talent there. Possible first-round pick there. My surprise team is Ole Miss, though. I think that the more I'm learning about them, the more I'm watching, more I'm reading about them, I think that maybe something could be going on there in the state of Mississippi. And I think Lane Kiffin could really have maybe his best year at Ole Miss. My champion, I went back and forth with this. I think I traded off champions like 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 times. But for some reason or another, I think the easy pick would be to say Georgia's going to roll that right back again. I think the East is way easier than the West. But, and this is really, really, really big but, I just get this feeling that Saban's going to pull it off. I think that because all the chips are down, there's all of these things that, has he lost a step? Is Alabama's dynasty over? I mean, there's all this talk about like the step backwards Alabama's taken, and I think he's just going to roll through people. I don't know why. I just get this feeling that Alabama is just going to be so motivated this year. And again, when you're talking about 18 to 23-year-old kids here, motivation is always one of the biggest factors. There's talent in Tuscaloosa. We all know that. They're a top 5 recruiting class year in, year out. I don't think Nick Saban forgot how to coach football. I think there's a lot of positive things over there. The quarterback thing still does concern me. I need to see it with my own 2 eyes. Georgia's the easy pick, but I just I'm just not I can't do it first because I get this feeling that Saban is really ticked off. So I'm going Alabama.
We said it during our top 25 breakdown. We had Alabama in our top five, and you can listen to that and get our true feelings on them. But that team, it's Saban is Saban for a reason. Alabama's Alabama for a reason. They are going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. All right, Fresh. This has been our conference breakdown here, folks. Hey, if you guys haven't done so already, please click that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, get notified every single time we drop a new episode. Folks, we have been cruising all summer long, adding subscribers to the channel, getting more people to listen, watch our material here. Guys, I love the comment section. These comments are phenomenal. You guys may think that we don't know diddly squat about your team. You may think that we are the best people in the world onto your team. I love you guys, K-State. I love you guys, Oregon State and Utah fans. You guys have been fantastic for us. But make sure you're hitting that subscribe bell. Hit the notification. Get notified. Make sure you're going to spinnablesports.com. We're going to have a ton of stuff. Fresh just dropped some college football articles. He's dropping fantasy football stuff. Get you ready for your draft there. Hey, there's nothing better than that. Leave us that 5-star review because you guys know Fresh and I, we're those 5-star prospects. And follow us on social media. We're already past 25,000, creeping to 26,000 Twitter followers. And the goal by the end of the season, 500 YouTube subscribers. So please help us on the way. Hit that subscribe button. I don't know if it's this way or that way. I'm pointing with my pen like I know. So, hey, it is what it is.
Everybody, join the party. Football season is just getting here. We still got a long way to go. Feel the excitement, feel the energy. Tune in with us, log in with us, dial in with us, leave comments, interact. We love it all. That's what we're here for. And with that, can't wait to keep with y'all and have a great season. But with that, bye, y'all.